Welcome to Beyond Your Why podcast, where we go beyond just talking about your why and actually help you discover and then live your why. You see, we believe that knowing your why, that driving force behind every decision you make and every action you take, is the essential first step to really knowing yourself. It allows you to move forward faster and have a bigger impact. If you're already a fan of the show, then you know that every week we talk about one of the 9 whys, and then we introduce you to somebody with that why so you can see how their why is played out in their life. This show will be more powerful for you if you've already discovered your why. If you still need to do that, head over to whyinstitute.com and discover your why today. It'll only take you about 5 minutes. Now, let's meet today's guest.
This week, we're going to be talking about the why of challenge, to challenge the status quo and think differently. So if this is your why, then you don't believe in following the rules or drawing inside the lines. You want things to be fun and exciting and different. You rebel against the classic way of doing things. You typically have eccentric friends and eclectic tastes because, after all, why would you want to be normal? You love to be different, think different, and you aren't afraid to challenge virtually anyone or anything that is too conventional or typical for your tastes. Pushing the envelope comes naturally to you. Today, I have a fascinating guest. His name is Father Nathan Cromly. He is the president and founder of the St. John Institute, whose mission is to raise up saints to lead by inspiring young people through Eagle Eye Ministry retreats, equipping Catholics through the St. John Leadership Institute programs, and engaging business and family leaders in integrating their faith with work, home, and the culture. His unique ability to form leaders through his Audeo methodology based on Thomas Aquinas inspires Catholics to live their faith in a way that is both spiritual and practical so they can dare great things for Christ. Father Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be interesting. I'm excited to spend some time together. So, where are you right now?
In Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Okay. So, take us back in your life. Where did you grow up, and what were you like in high school?
Well, you know, when you look back over the way that the Lord makes every one of us, each one of us is unique. And when you think about the 9 whys, if I look at challenge, that's been the modus of my entire life. So me in high school is about the same as I am now.
Yeah.
In the sense that, you know, you find who you are and you go for it. And you give everything you've got behind who you know you are. And so the Lord came into my life when I was a young person. And so in high school, I was living my faith out loud for Him in high school. And serving, you know, His ministry and His kingdom in high school.
And what was it that took you in that direction? What was it that, did you grow up in the church? Was your family always involved in the Catholic Church?
That's correct. We're all raised in the faith. Yep. And then when I was 13, I had an encounter with the Lord in prayer. And after the encounter with the Lord, I just wanted to give everything that I had to Him and His sermon. And so then, you know, you mature that, and it takes time. And, you know, there's plenty, I was 26 when I finally made my vows. So 13 years of discerning and thinking it through before I was able to, engage in that.
So people that knew you in high school, would they have realized that you think differently, that you don't do things the way everybody else does?
Yeah, I think that they would have felt that way.
What is it that would have made them feel that way?
Well, I think there's always been inside of me a desire to go for the highest and the most intense. And not a lot of people feel that way about things. But I think it's important, the idea of pushing the envelope, from the inside. And seeing, how far we can go with things. That's just been very much a part of who I am.
How did you handle, let's say, being told what to do, showing up like, hey, you've got to follow all these rules. How did that work for you as you were growing up?
For me, anyway, it would be, this is what's good and necessary in order to get where I'm trying to go, right? So, like, a big part of what drives me as a person is that inner fire, right? So that inner fire will allow you to go through all kinds of things that you might not expect to be able to go through, right? Including, like, you talk about following rules, try being a Catholic priest. It's like rules squared, and then not just being any kind of priest, but being a religious priest, that's even more. And so you to follow rules, but that's like allows you to, it's like the banks on a river. If a river doesn't have banks, it becomes a mud puddle. So the banks channel, allow you to give the best that you have in yourself. And I quickly realized that. So I think there's a paradox that I didn't really see, spelled out real well on the why sheet, but it could be in there, because it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be nonconformist. It could very well be that you recognize that in your conformity to the social norms, or to rules, or to regulations, or to whatever, there's a chance for you to give the very best of yourself. So on the other side of it, of course. So, but I think everybody realized that and try to live it out.
I love the way you said that, because we talk about that in terms of bumpers, right? And the width of the bumpers, that each one of the 9 whys has really a width of bumpers that they function in the best. So if you take somebody with the why of challenge like yourself, and you make those bumpers really narrow, where your playing field is very narrow, and you can't think freely, and you can't be yourself in there, how would that work for you? Versus, let's give Father Nathan some wide bumpers and let him play a lot within this area, but we're still going in the right direction. Does that feel like what you're talking about?
I see what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. Growing up Catholic, of course, there are definitely bumpers. And then I was in an all-boys Catholic high school. So there was, even more of that. But it was always with this, I think that, there's a difference for me anyway. The challenge that I embrace isn't necessarily a challenge just to express myself. It's a challenge to give myself. And I think that's a good distinction also for many people, because it's kind of the next level. The one thing is to accept who you are, but the next thing is to give it. And that's a whole different kind of challenge and a deeper one.
Wow. Okay, so you graduate from high school, and then where do you go from high school in Toledo?
So I went to DeSales University out in at Pennsylvania. It's about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia, in the Poconos.
Okay. And is that a seminary school, or what type of a university or school is it? Okay, university.
University, yeah.
Okay.
And I studied religion there, studied theology. Got a very good education. It's a good place to be. And then after that, I went on and taught high school for a year in order to basically serve and pay off my debts, so that then I could enter seminary. It's the journey to being a priest begins with seminary. But of course, there's a preparation before all of that, and as you go through different other schools, just done in a personal way from the Lord, an internal way.
So at what point did you know, when you were 13, you knew you were going to go to seminary school, and it just took 13 years to get there, or you... Okay.
Well, like about 6 months before I did.
Okay. What was
the feel a call, and the other thing is to follow it, right?
Okay. So in college, did you you didn't know that you were going to be going to become a priest?
No, I was thinking about it.
Okay.
You ponder these things a long time. I didn't really decide to go until about 6 months before.
Okay. So what's it like in seminary school? Most of us will never experience that. What is seminary school like?
You live a very regimented life in order to teach you to do the higher things. It's a place of excellence where you're constantly put towards the ultimate. It's the for example, you pray 4 hours in a day, not just once, not just saying your prayers, but 4 hours every day. But there's an incredible, amount of a blessing there, but like what, a lot of discipline. Well, that's where the structure and the rhythm of the day comes in. So there's it's a protected kind of environment in the sense that you're really allowed to focus yourself and your energies to give the best of yourself to the highest of things, right, to the Lord. And it's a place of a lot of study, where you read a lot and you're forming your mind and then discussing things, with your confreres and praying. And just think of it almost like it's a type of training to live at a higher level. So there's the more basic elements of us, are given their rightful place. But, there's like a curbing that takes place there. And to really, that's like an arrow in a bowstring, to shoot at that target of being in love with God and living out your love for God and for others. What that's all about.
The reason I'm asking you so many questions like that is because it's fascinating to me that somebody with the why of challenge would A, pick that, B, be able to live like that and want to follow it. That's so not in line with what I am expecting, because Dan, who is also has a big part of that, and my wife has the why of challenge, and so for me to picture them in that scenario doesn't seem possible. And you lived it, and you live it, and you went through it. So I find that fascinating.
Well, love will make you do a lot of things, but like if you think of it from the point of view of you're talking to a man wearing a gray robe, with a shaved head and sandals, and the fact that I've taken 3 vows, a vow of poverty, a vow of chastity, and a vow of obedience, and I've given by those 3 vows every single aspect of my entire life to God. Poverty means no possessions, so everything that I could own, I don't own anything. I'll never own anything. Your chastity is your body working inwards from the outside in. And you get to give all of your sensitivity, all of your affections, all of that to the love of God. And then obedience, the inside of who you are, putting that at as a gift of to follow what your superiors ask you to do, which is not an absolute thing, but in the big things of life. In the end, that's quite a challenge. Yes. And that's quite a statement to our world, and that's why the Catholic Church wants the priests to wear this kind of garb and all that, is to remind the world that, in a sense, the people who are really awake, and alert are the ones who are pushing the envelope to go to the next level, the whole next level. And so when we're talking about God and faith, we're talking about the next level. And it's interesting because for as much as there's a lot of gusto in our CEOs and our business community, and I would kind of sometimes I smile because I'm like, these guys don't go far enough. When you really want to see gusto, start talking about the next life, right? Instead, start living this life as if the next life was real, and as if the next life was deep life, love, intimate love. Now, part that is, there's a whole other course. All people, the whole other first course that is that both never relax. You can be a leader on the outside by your position, power. You could be a leader on the outside by what you can do or how you can persuade people. But being a leader on the inside, that's a lot more powerful and impactful, because then it's a matter of depth. Everyone who encounters you is changed by it. Well, to become a leader on the inside, that requires a deeper gift of self than just self-development. It's like I said, it's the difference between developing yourself and giving yourself, expressing yourself and giving yourself. A gift of yourself. Wow, there you go. So in religious life, anyway, for me, that challenge was found there. Can I really live for the ultimate thing in the midst of a whole group of world that doesn't even know that ultimate thing exists? And can I joyfully bring them along with me? Can I speak a word to them to communicate what I've got inside? There's a huge amount of challenge in that, and my whole lifestyle becomes a challenge ultimately to the world, to say that there's something deeper, something higher, and we shouldn't be satisfied with just the little things. We should go for the greatest.
Wow. I can imagine when you went into seminary school, did you know that's what you were signing up for?
Oh, sure. That's why you go there.
Yeah.
See, like, if you go back, right, you encounter God. Like, I encountered God, and I had a thirst for it. And then it's a question of, well, is that a mature thing? Is it a balanced thing? Is the Lord really calling you to that? Or, and so you take time and you experience life and you go through things and have a job and, you play in sports teams and have friends and hang out after school. But you grow. And then as you do more serious things and get jobs, and like I did, teaching school, but I also ran my own business. I worked with my hands and I, did all these different things. You're maturing up into that. To then say, yeah, who I am, now knowing myself, it matches with this desire that I have to go, and to be with him. So that's when you then go to the seminary school. So the vocation comes first, and then comes the training for it. And the training is really just it's just an opportunity to really conform everything you've got to that desire to live for them.
It's interesting because the way you're describing that is so similar to the way I hear people talk about going to special forces or special ops, in the military. What they had to prepare themselves for to then go to really be trained to be something special, which is very much what you did. Right?
Well, I think in a real way, there's the same ethos between a professional, a military person, an athlete, and the religious person. Usually the first three are what we always compare because we're secular, right? But like if you think about what priests do, or the monks or the nuns that you never meet, people that are totally unaware. We hear about monks, but like I'd like to ask for a little bit of respect, on behalf of my religious confreres. From the secular people in the world, even if you don't believe in God, that's okay. But I want you to go and investigate what these guys do. There's a fellow who lives in the foothills here in Denver who has given up absolutely everything, meaning for the rest of his life, he lives alone. Lives alone in a life of prayer, 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 hours a day. And every night at 12:30 in the morning, he wakes up and does an hour of prayer for the world, which means he never sleeps for a complete cycle through the night. The most he'll ever sleep is 4 hours a night at one time for the rest of his life. And he gave that up, and he's in his early 50s. And he'll live like that till he's 80. But just we don't hear about that, so we don't know to respect it. But I think we ought to, because could a Navy SEAL or a Special Forces operator, would they be willing to go that far? They even give up their physical health for the sake of their prayer or for the sake of the service. I'm thinking of Mother Teresa's sisters. In Ethiopia, they opened a home for women who had been cast out on the streets for lack of mental capacities. And the families couldn't take care of them or whatever. And they have 500 of these women living together, taking care of them, their physical health, their mental health, their emotional health. And the sisters themselves bathe in a bucket. They pour a bucket over their heads, for they don't even have a shower. Now, that level of dedication, and they do that for free, without anybody knowing them, without any podcast, doing anything, and it amazes me, and I think it summons a thought process in every person who just encounters this message about the greatness that requires, regardless of your stance on faith, in terms of human dedication and human sacrifice for this great gift of themselves, because they do it without any gold medals, any newspaper articles, any attention being given to them, because they love those kids. And that hermit loves the world. And it's too bad people don't see it more. But then again, that's all, that's part of the mysteries, of life. Right?
That's really fast. I'm so glad that we're having an opportunity to talk, because I wouldn't know that either. I did grow up in Catholic school, but I was never exposed to what actually happens, what it actually takes to become a priest, or to live, or, as you said, a religious life. It's fascinating, the level of dedication that you have to have in order to get where you are.
I'll tell you a story. I was talking with an older friar, when I was a young man, I wanted to be a friar, and so he was an older priest, he was probably in his 70s, and he wore a rope around his waist, and then the rope had 3 knots. They tied big knots in the rope, one standing for poverty, one standing for chastity, one standing for obedience. And I said to him, Father, I really feel called, but I'm scared. I'm scared to do this because, it's just a lot. And he grabbed the rope and he said, see this rope? And I said, yes. And he said, all the money in the world couldn't buy this. The only men who could wear this rope are the ones who've given everything and will never own anything. And it made me realize that it's a whole different register you're dealing with here. And yet there are millions of people. Yeah, there's 2 million priests in the church in the world alone. And then you've got all of the nuns and all the friars and all the monks. I mean, there's a lot of people living it. And I think it would be fascinating study if anybody watching is an author, to look at and analyze that from the inside, because you're going to find a metal there of soul. You know what it costs to become a monk? Everything. And not just for a short period of your life, for your entire life. So you actually, instead of only saying, I'm going to die in the next battle and I'm ready to go, we do that every single day. If you're living it well, I don't want to over idealize. We're all, imperfect and sinners, but there's this, at least there's a fire deep inside to say that. And then what's neat is, Gary, we look and we say, well, that's the same thing in a dad, and the same thing in a husband. It's the same thing in a business leader. As a matter of fact, that's the same thing in the Navy SEAL. It's what makes people leaders. And I think that leadership is found inside of those religious people in a beautiful way. And it's not to neglect any other way where leadership is found. I would just rather say it's a neglected area of study in people's attention. And I think it'd be a really fascinating and opening thing for people to just take a look and to think about what the nuns do, what the sisters do in order to be where they are, and priests and as well.
What keeps crossing my mind is, did you ever feel like quitting? Did you ever feel, do you have those moments, do they just not exist? Or do you not have thoughts of, this is too much for me, this is not, I didn't know it was going to be like this? What goes through you mentally during this journey? And I know you're still on the journey, but when you embark on it, how do you keep going? Because that's a lot to ask of an individual.
Everyone's different. And like I said, I'm painting a very idealistic picture. And in reality, there's a lot of, it's humanity in the end.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to over, idealize something, but there's to keep going. It's a question of love. Just like it is for you. How do you keep going in the dedication of yourself? The religious person has simply chosen to give themselves to God, but the secular person gives themselves as well. And the people that they serve, that they follow, their families, their spouses, this gift of self. So in all of that, what keeps the person going in the gift of self is love. And so for me, there's the Lord. And the older that you get and the longer that you go, the more that you have to give, meaning that there's less of you left. So yeah. It becomes, every little drop becomes that much more precious, which makes the gift even more beautiful to him. But so I would say to anyone, how do you keep going? You go back and you ask yourself, who am I doing this for? And who is it whom I'm loving by this? To whom am I giving myself? There's the difference between burnout and self-sacrifice. Is that burnout is done in the void, or it's done for ourselves. Self-sacrifice is when you know very well, and you are dads, or moms. They know what it is. They look at those kids and they're like, it's like, I think of a mom as like a candle. She's lit and it's beautiful and warm, but the expense of that is all of the wax underneath. and you live to be 80, 85, shining that beautiful light, and then there's nothing left because you've chosen to make your wax into a flame, right? And that's a choice for every human being to do. And that choice is one that's love. I think if we could put more love into our talk instead of, understanding why I'm developing myself. Well, is the end really just to nail it in your business? Because it's like, and then what? What are you going to do with that business? You're going to sell it. And then what? Then you're going to be bored. Enough guys who sell their business and then they're like, what am I supposed to do? And so you go scuba diving and then you take your plane lesson and then you're just terribly bored. And then you got Elon Musk wanting to do a cage match with Zuckerberg, because they got nothing else to do. I guess when you have billions of dollars, you decide to take up, martial arts. That to me, I'm not interested in that at all. You can keep all of that because there's something deeper than developing yourself for yourself. And that's developing yourself so that you can give yourself to people who you can help and lift up. And if I look at my staff that way, my employees that way, my colleagues that way, people that I meet that way, I become a light.
Man, that is awesome. I was having a conversation with a lady earlier today, and she was talking about how her mother went through dementia and how that journey to the end with her, and how she kept thinking, why is this going on? Why are we dealing with this? Why did this happen? Right? There seems like there's no sense to this. And then once her mother was gone, she now became the mentor for others going through the same thing. And it allowed her to, what she learned allows her to give of herself. And I assume there's some of that, or a lot of that, in what you're learning on your journey that you can give to us that haven't been on that journey.
Yeah, that's right. And that the secret to all is love. The thing that unites, I would almost say a shallow leader, it could be a quest for self and self-development. But anyone who's truly a leader from the inside, secular or not, believer or not, military, whatever, is that they do it for a deeper purpose, a higher call, a higher cause. And what I simply am witnessing to is that God is the highest of all the causes, and he's there. And so I found him, and that's my gift of love then to you, to the people I meet, to the world that I'm trying to impact. Because I noticed in Challenge, you had that quote on your little sheet there saying, if we exist to make a dent in the world. And I smiled because I'm like, that's me.
Yeah.
100%. And yet what unites us, and that's something we can all embody here, is to get out of living for ourselves. There's always a self-development and self-fulfillment. That's not what I'm saying to not enjoy life. I'm saying to see that you are beautiful and gifted and graced for a reason. And that reason is to bring up everyone whom you meet to be a better, at a better level, to live at a higher level. And I think we desperately need our leaders in this world today to do that instead of walking through the world, constantly focused on how everyone will bow down to them. Because in the end, you're going to be on a hospital bed somewhere, and some priest will walk in wearing sandals and a gray robe, and we'll tell you you can't take anything with you. The only thing you can take with you is what you give away. The only thing you take with you is what you give away. So I want you to think about that, because that's...
When you say the secret is love, can you dive a little bit more into that? How do you define love?
Love is seeing any other person around you as someone you can serve in some way, in an appropriate way. I'm not saying to romanticize anything, from the cash register person to the person at Walmart who greets you at the door. Like, I'm there, like I'm admiring them, and I'm there to bring them up with saying hello back, by giving the money the right way, but by being aware of that person. My goodness, at the end of our life, we're not going to have any of our stress or any of our anxieties. We're not going to have anything else. What we will have is our heart. And so filling the world with love, it sounds sappy, but I'd say I'd like to say everyone sounds sappy. I want you to try it, because I'm kind of a little bit sensitive, Gary, to the fact that people today will discount my entire witness of my entire life and discount of people, not just me, but nuns, priests, who've given poverty, chastity, and obedience until death. They'll discount us as being somehow, well, that's this soft stuff about religion or being nice to people. I'm like, you try being nice people. That'd be kind of neat. Forgive your enemies. How about that? Love those who hurt you. Go the extra mile when someone asks you for one, do two. That's what our Lord told us to do. Now suddenly, whoa, that's going to ask for me a whole different level of commitment. I'm like, exactly. And I'd like to say, regardless of your faith, why don't we adapt what we can of that? If you're a dentist, and I think one of the two of us is a dentist, that, each one of your patients, that's someone I can treat like my son. And how would I want to be treated if I was sitting there in the chair, and then do the same. I'll tell you one thing they wouldn't want, Gary, and that's for you to ask them questions or tell them jokes that they can't laugh at. Being a dental patient, it's something else. How are you today? I'm really good.
We're good at that. That's what we do. So let's go back now. You went off to seminary school, and where was that, and how long was that process, and then what happened to you after that?
So after seminary, I went to France. Was in Texas for a year. Then I lived in France for seminary. And then in the midst of it, I went to Illinois for 2 years. It's a part of an itinerary. So I went through the itinerary of seminary. But then you're ordained. I was ordained a priest in 2007. And for me, part of this, the challenge, I guess, right? Like I met with 3 young people who told me that they were all going to leave their religion behind. They thought I was cool, so they wanted to talk to me. One was 16, one was 17, one was 19. And they said that, we don't plan on keeping our faith once we get out of the house. Don't tell mom and dad. And I said, well, why would you leave the faith? And they said, well, why should we stay? And I realized that they had no one to show that here I was, age 26, completely given to this cause. And here they were, they had no idea what I had discovered. So I said, what if I start something for you? Will you stay? If I could show you how wonderful, could I make a challenge? Give me 1 week to show you why you should stay. And they said, oh, that'd be great. We would do it, And so I invented a program for them. It's developed into what we call Eagle Eye Ministries. EagleEyeMinistries.org is the website. And it's outreach to teens, young adults. It's a Catholic thing, it's because I'm a Catholic priest. I'm a member of the team, so but you get the idea. But I had no experience in youth ministry. I had no desire to work with youth. I just saw a challenge there, right? And I saw something that had never been done, that wasn't being done effectively for these kids at least. And so I went in and started. And that program's gone now for 20 years. And I don't even know how many young people have gone through it, but many thousand. Or several, I should say many, several thousand, probably thousands.
What was that challenge that you gave them so you said, give me a week and I'll show you why you should stay in the church?
That was the challenge.
And what did you show them that allowed them to stay in the church?
Fire and love. Wherever there's love, there's a force that's stronger than anything. So we bring them in to, they would be able to pray with us and experience things with us, that kind of sharing what we do on the inside with them and in their own way, with fun and, all kinds of things, like campfires and a hiking experience and, silliness and whatever else is appropriate, but allowing them to see that the religion was a relationship. And I find that most people are willing to accept that. Most people that I meet, they accept God. They know, they acknowledge a God. All I do is I say, okay, well, if that relationship exists, then why not develop it? Right? Just like we develop ourselves for our employees, we develop ourselves for our family. Why don't I develop myself for God? There's a relationship I can deepen. And by showing them that, I think, it hasn't worked for everybody. I mean, again, everything is flawed. Nothing's perfect in life. But that was the goal. And that's what I started to do. And then I just developed that ministry. And as we developed it, we realized it needed a structure, it needed organization, it needed accounting, it needed marketing, it needed, stuff that we're still working on today. And that's what got me fascinated with the world of business. Because all my advisors, you enter as a priest to do these amazing spiritual things and to speak with people, but you have to stand on some sort of stage, right? That was built, right? You have to have a platform of organizational structure, of how do you thank volunteers? How do you work with volunteers? How do you get your word to be recorded and sent out? All these different practical things. Well, every time I needed help, it was the world of business that came to my help. And so I started thinking, well, my goodness, what they're doing is actually what I'm doing, except they're doing a lot better. And so I started reaching out to them to learn. And I just became enamored in admiration for the professionals of this world, the executives of this world, the managers of this world. And I said, I'd like to bring your gifts deeper into the spiritual place of the church. I wish we could show everyone inside of the spiritual world the importance and the beauty and the dedication, the sacrifice and the giftedness and the skill set that you own, that you have. And then everyone that's in your world, I wish you could see the dedication and fire and the grit and also the joy and the love that's in the spiritual thing. And so I wanted to make a bridge. That's what became the St. John Institute. Only reading about a thing called the St. John Leadership Network. And my whole work with leadership is because I see that on the two sides of the same coin, you've got the business professional and you've got spirituality. And we tend to divide them. And I have so many business and spirit people who unfortunately just feel like spirituality is just not in their wheelhouse. I'm not going there. I'm not listening to a priest on beyond your why. I don't want to, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, why not? Really, why is that division? And it's because we've allowed it to be. And I think actually, if I could get the power of spirituality behind your business, wouldn't your business flourish? I bet it would. And if I can get the power of your business behind your spirituality, wouldn't your spirituality flourish? I bet it would. That's what I'm working to do.
Wow. And what's the name of your Dare
Great Things for Christ.
Dare Great Things for Christ.
So I started a podcast that people can listen to called Dare Great Things or Dare Great Things for Christ podcast. And it's all about faith and business. And then I also, I do programs and I teach executives and teach management. I go into companies that are secular, but you don't have, it's what I mean. It's not a question of faith. It's a question of outlook, right? And what company don't you want to be bound by love and to have respect and appreciation and listening and also encouragement and challenge and conflict resolution? All these wonderful things that are at the heart of what we do in the church. So just, so I'll go into companies that are secular. I'll go into companies that are owned by Christians and who want a Christian, and I help them with the Christian ethos inside the company. But I take the message that's in the gospel and I just bring that together with the challenge that's in business. And what I really would like is for the challenge of the business could then come back and help the people of the gospel to become a little bit more, realistic and efficient and extend their influence, even greater.
So how are you looked at from the other people in the Catholic community, the other priests? How do they, you're out there in the secular, you're not doing it the way they're doing it. How is that being perceived and how's that going for you?
Oh, it's great. You definitely stand out, and if the church is a hand, there's four fingers and a thumb, so I'm the thumb. That's all part of that challenge in the walk,
yes.
Right?
Yes,
it's going fine. But it's going fine. I would say that, priests are excited because priests care. And most of your priests, these are guys who have masters in theology, who speak multiple languages, who are cultivated with many incredible habits of culture and art, music, and these different things, and yet who are then straddled with a $3 million budget and a staff that they don't even know how to look at a spreadsheet. They don't know what a balance sheet is. They don't know HR policies or laws. They don't know what interview questions they can ask in a hiring process. And that's a woeful inadequacy. and one that I hope to be able to help, and by making good contacts in the world of business and bringing them to teach and to inform and to dialogue, because our church needs that. But therefore, they know, and they need to have stronger professionals in their lives. I think if you are around any priests or ministers or clerics or rabbis or whatever religion you are, befriend them a little bit, because they usually will pretty quickly start asking you for help. And I think that that's kind of neat. In terms of my ministry itself, it's embraced, but it's certainly not the focus. Where the Catholic ministry really focuses itself is the family, baptizing the kids, keeping the marriage together, blessing them when it's like the life cycle is the, and so I'm pushing that envelope a little bit, actually a lot, by developing and going into this. And I know a few other priests, maybe 4 out of 2 million, that are trying. But it wouldn't surprise me if it catches on more, because it's not as if anyone's against it. It's just more like it's not the typical way.
No. So, how are you different as a priest now than you were, say, when you were 30?
I'm a lot more realistic about my limitations. I'd like to think I'm a lot humbler, a lot freer to just love the Lord and to do it for Him. I'd like to think that I have a deeper perspective also on my target. When you're younger, it's there's things to achieve and to hit, but they're not always the most important things to achieve or hit. And as you journey through, you start to see where people really need the messaging and what you need to do as a messenger to really bring that messaging to them. And it's a different level. And it's just like in life. It's like when you're married. I tell couples all the time, it takes 50 years to be married. And if you were to look at your marriages and say, where was I 10 years ago, and then now, 30 years later, you'd kind of smile and you'd be like, I'm more married. Well, I'm much more a priest. You become this gift. Hopefully 30 years from now, I'll be able to say the exact same thing and be a lot less about me and a lot more about Him and about the people that I serve. I've learned an experience in this, I'm young in the priesthood. I'm not the eminent old priest yet. Hopefully I will be one day. But what I've seen is to admire the people. And it's so powerful. You get to witness the human person in ways few people do. Medical doctors are just the body. The lawyer is just your problems. Right? The priest is your heart. And I'm just in awe. And so I think I'm growing in a deeper and deeper awareness of just how majestically wonderful every human being is. And I'm growing. I'm a sinner, and I'm full of weaknesses, and I'm not perfect at all. But that's my aspiration, right? That's what's deep inside it, and it's something that every time I get close to it, makes me very profoundly happy.
I love that. Father Nathan, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or the best piece of advice you've ever given?
Oh, it's so hard to say. That's a tough one. How about we just do a good piece of advice that I've been given? Can we do that, Gary?
Yes.
You know how that is. It's like, what's your favorite movie? It's like, well, yeah, it's never really honest because, in fact, we have 10 of them. So a good piece of advice that sticks with me is wear the world lightly. Wear the world lightly. And that was from a speaker that I heard, another priest actually. But it made a lot of sense. It's almost like don't take yourself too seriously, right? Wear the world lightly, to not allow yourself to be chained in to the weight of things. The beautiful phrase that he used was, your life should be like a firework display. It's there, it explodes in beauty, and then it's gone. So like, don't take it too seriously, you know, at the same time. Give you the best of yourself to God, because that's where you're going. And then the best advice that I ever gave, don't listen to me. I don't know. Best advice that I ever gave, Gary. I probably gave a lot of bad advice, so I probably keep my mouth shut. I'll tell you something else someone told me once that I think is a good one, and for everyone to remember it, you know, regardless of your faith, is a fellow told me once, he said, do God's will and go out the back door. I think that that's a good one for us all. I think God's will, and then go out the back door.
That's awesome. When you took the YOS discovery and it came up with your why of challenge, and then your how was better way, finding better ways, and ultimately what you bring are solutions that make sense. What did that feel like to you?
Oh, like, you know, yeah. I thought, I don't know how we got that out for so few questions. Because you nailed it, you know. I thought maybe the description, I'm not quite as artistically oriented, but like I said, you curve a lot. So maybe the typical challenge person he'd be, but like, I thought it was really great because it showed me that it just verified, you know, stuff that who I was. But I thought that's an interesting take on who I am to figure that out, because that's what I do. So I challenge the status quo in a million different ways, obviously, from starting my own things to inventing things that don't exist, to becoming religious in the presence of the world, to, you know, vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. But then I also like to do it the better way, to take things that they are as they are and to push, but then the common sense solution. So the how of, I mean, that's what I do. I'd make the most complex. Listen, I speak 5 languages. I read the Bible in Greek. You know, so like for me to then, you know, to think that we could have all of that knowledge and then not make that present to the simple questions people have. How do I live? Who am I? Where am I going? What's life all about? That's a shame. So what I want to do is take the complex stuff and make it extremely simple and practical for folks. And so I just laughed to myself. I wonder how they invented a test to find that out.
Well, I'm glad we did. And I'm glad we had an opportunity to talk, because this has been fascinating. And you've opened my eyes to a lot of things I hadn't really thought of either. And I'm sure you have the listeners or people watching this as well, because you're not typical. You're not, you know, maybe let me ask you one more question. I could probably ask you questions for forever, but what is the biggest challenge that you run into in being able to connect with others? And I'll tell you where I was going with that, because I wonder if people are reluctant to connect with you for fear of being judged.
100%. Yeah. You know, I wear this outfit everywhere I go. Every day. For 24 years of my life, I've worn this. Everywhere I've gone. Airports, stores, the Denver Broncos games, Denver Nugget games. I wear this everywhere I go. I don't take it off, except for like if I'm doing sports or whatever. But, and you know, I would say 1 person out of 10,000 will ask me a question about it. And you know that it challenges them to, like, they don't know what it is. They don't know who I am, but they don't ask. And I think that that's to your point. I think that there's a big intimidation factor, and that people feel that somehow or other they're not worthy of speaking up or of asking a question. It takes a lot of self-esteem to just ask a question to someone like, why are you dressed like that? Who are you? Tell me your story. That one no one ever asks. They just say, why are you dressed like that? And when you try to tell them. But it's amazing to me because very quickly it shuts down. So yeah, I think that the challenge, I would say, comes more from the folks themselves, because I'm just there happy to serve. And my whole life is to try to give and to help people wherever they are to be the best person they are, atheist or narcissist or criminal, to shine the light of love on them somehow. But there is an obstacle in that I represent 2,000 years of a history that's full of failures and flaws, and that's hurt a lot of people. It's helped a lot more, I'd like to think. At the same time, there's all of that present. and I represent it. I represent a God that many people that have a hard time with. So the biggest challenge in connecting with people, I would say, it's to let them see that I'm real. To let them see past this. That I'm real on the other side as a human being. To allow them that. Once you do, well, then there's a bridge that's made, and I can also be blessed by that.
I feel like next time I see you, or when I see you, you're going to have a sign on you that just says, come say hi, or something like that, because I think it would be awesome for people to connect with you and just spend some time with you and not be fearful of being judged.
I'm worse than you. I think it's neat because, when you're a priest and you're hearing confessions, you're in awe of the person who's in front of you. And you're no better than them. And listening to confessions makes you so incredibly humble because you're listening to the greatness of the person who's sitting there with love in their hearts, speaking of their fight for what's beautiful and true and good in the world. And it's just like, people shouldn't be afraid of being judged. A priest that acts that way, is unfortunately just not at his best, right? Like, I don't, if you remember why the man did it, why is he standing there dressed that way? And then you think he did it because he wanted to be available to you. Hopefully that can help.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. This has been really enlightening and very enjoyable. And if there's people that are listening or watching that want to connect with you, want to learn more about you, want to follow you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The St. John Institute. So there's a website that's right up there, stjohninstitute.org, and just, hit the contact form and fill it out and reach out. I'd love to, to follow up. We do a lot of excellent programs. So I'm not exactly sitting here feeding the birds like your little Friar bird bath lawn decoration. I'd say that much. Like we're trying to make a dent in the world. So, but I'd be happy to say hello.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here.
God bless you.
I really hope you enjoyed today's episode and that through today's guest, you heard how important it is to know your why and how impactful it can be in your life and the lives of those around you. Be sure to head over to whyinstitute.com and discover your why today. Remember, the more you know about yourself, the more you'll know about others. I'm Dr. Gary Sanchez, and I'll see you on the next episode.